All right. Hopefully you are making your way back, as it is 3:30. So we're gonna move. If you looked at the schedule, you'll see there's a line-by-line breakout session. We're gonna cut that today, purely because we've had so many good questions coming along. We're just a little behind, which is great. It's fine. And we'll talk about how to use the practice line by line in the Spar debates. And then teachers from session 1 or 2, there are recorded times where Anthony has specifically talked about teaching line by line, and we will get you access to those videos so that you can take a look at those 20, 30-minute videos. They're pretty short. For how to teach, but you also have Anthony's teaching line by line instructions or PowerPoint as well. Anthony,
if you don't have time to watch the video, that is obviously totally understandable.
Yes.
And if you watch the slideshow, you'll probably get like 80% of what I said out of that. And if you have questions about anything, feel free to email me. I will provide
Yep.
I'll do it again at the end, but I will also do it right now. You can email me any questions that you have about anything.
And then as always, if you need to get in contact with us and you've lost our contact, just contact Fulbright Taiwan. They will put you in contact with us. Anthony, just as a quick reminder, if you could turn subtitles on, pretty please.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great idea. I'm actually glad someone asked because I wouldn't have thought about it. All right.
Yeah, I was shocked by how good they were.
Yeah. In Google, you can do it on Google Slides as well, as long as you're in Chrome. Come to find out. So, okay. I will be on the chat, so feel free to ask questions on chat, or as the teachers learned, you can talk to us as well and say things over the microphone.
Yeah, students too. Students, you all were very vocal last session. Love it. Very awesome. So definitely, if you have questions, you want to chime in, feel free to do that whenever you would like to. Okay. So this session, I want to talk to you all about the 3 things that you can see on the title screen, which are flowing, line by line, and argument structure. Argument structure, this is an idea you are probably familiar with, but flowing and line by line, you might be a little less familiar with. So what am I talking about? Got some review slides that I'm going to skip. Flowing is a special term that we have for how we take notes during a debate. The reason we call it flowing is because the goal of flowing is not just to write down what words are said and what arguments are made. The goal is to record a flow of the debate, so we can keep track of not just the arguments themselves, but how they fit together within the broader debate picture. So this includes both speech to speech. So how do the arguments in the summary relate to the arguments in the rebuttal? And within a speech. So how do the arguments at the beginning of the summary relate to the arguments at the end of the summary? And to help our notes reflect this information, we take notes using some special tricks and formats. The first thing to know about flowing is that we use 2 sheets of paper to flow each debate. We can use normal paper, but I would recommend using printer paper, so paper without lines on it. So notebook paper is okay, it will get the job done, but printer paper is perfect. And if you have long paper, so blank paper that is taller or wider, that's even better because you can fit more information on that paper. But normal printer paper is totally fine if you do not have that. So 2 sheets of paper for the debate. The reason we need 2 is because we want to use 1 piece of paper to record the pro case and 1 piece of paper to record the con case. So 1 piece of paper is about the pro and the other is about the con. To record the debate as it goes, we use columns. Each column on our paper represents 1 speech. So let's think of, so picture in your head your pro piece of paper. So you start on the left, you will write down the first pro speech in a column. Someone remind me, what's the first pro speech? Anyone remember from this morning? First speech. Oh, wait. I closed the chat on accident. Constructive, yes, exactly. So the first pro speech is the constructive speech. So on our pro piece of paper, we flow the first pro speech in our first column, and that's the constructive. Now, slightly trickier, what's the second speech that we will write down on our pro sheet of paper?
Crossfire?
Good guess, but no, we actually don't record the crossfire because the crossfire is more like a conversation and not really a speech. But good guess. Rebuttal. It is a rebuttal. Which rebuttal? The pro rebuttal or the con rebuttal? What do you think? So you said pro, good guess. It's actually the con rebuttal. The reason is we're writing down the debate about the pro case. So which speeches talk about the pro case? The pro constructive talks about the pro case. The con constructive talks about the con case. Then we've got a crossfire, which we don't need to flow. Then we've got the pro rebuttal. But the pro rebuttal is responding to the con case. So we actually write that down on the con piece of paper. And then we have the con rebuttal. And the con rebuttal is responding to the pro constructive, the pro case. So we write the con rebuttal on the pro piece of paper. Does that make sense? Kind of. I will show you all visually what all of this looks like in a couple of slides. So if you are confused at this point and you have no idea what I'm talking about, okay, we got a couple of thumbs ups. If you don't have a perfect idea, that's okay. I will show you in a second. Hopefully it will make more sense once I demonstrate. So we flow in columns and we write down each speech kind of across our sheet of paper. It is very easy to flow the constructive and the rebuttal. All you have to do for the constructive and the rebuttal is write them straight down in columns on our sheet. But the reason we do this is because of what happens with the summary and the final focus, which are those later speeches. Remember when we were going through the structure of the debate in the morning, I said that it's important to think about the debate in 2 parts. The constructive and rebuttal is where arguments are introduced. In the constructive, you introduce your case, and in the rebuttal, you introduce your responses. And the summary and final focus are for resolving and comparing the arguments from earlier to try to win the debate with them. So once you've recorded the constructive and rebuttal in your columns, the summary and the final focus, we will record in new columns, but we will actually try to line the arguments that are being made up with the previous speech so that we have the argument and its response right next to each other. So imagine you have your rebuttal, you had 4 arguments in the rebuttal, you had your first argument, and then the summary speech will respond to the first argument, and you have your response right next to it. Summary speech responds to the second argument, you have the second, you have that response right there. Third argument, third response. Fourth argument, fourth response. So arguments in the summary and the final focus, we want to line up with the previous speeches. It's also important to leave space between arguments. This is because we want to make it so there's enough room for us to write down all of the responses. My suggestion is the 3-finger rule. And what that means is if you do this, you have the height of 3 fingers. That is how much room you should be leaving between arguments so that you have enough room to write down all of the responses next to the argument in the column after. And then the last idea I want to say is you should use shorthand. So you can use an abbreviation, or you can use some kind of symbol. What kind of shorthand you use is totally up to you. But the reason why it's important to use shorthand is you're not going to be able to write down every word the opposing team says. So shorthand will get the most important ideas onto the piece of paper. And that way you will have time to record everything important so you don't miss anything. Questions about this? And again, I will demonstrate this in a second. All right. So one of the main reasons we flow is because flowing helps us do line by line. Line by line is our term for how you organize a speech in the second half of a public forum debate. So remember, the constructive and rebuttal are very easy to organize. You don't really have to make your arguments in any specific order. You can just kind of make your argument, and then you would write them down straight down in columns next to each other. Starting with the summary, though, the debate gets a lot more complicated. So how do we organize our arguments so that they make sense and they're easy to follow? The answer is we use line by line, which is the idea that we respond to our opponent's arguments in the same order that our opponents made them. We respond to our opponent's arguments in the same order that our opponents made them. We call it line by line because of how it looks on the flow. Think back to our imaginary rebuttal column. We had 4 responses, right? So when we do line by line, we're thinking of each rebuttal argument as a line on our flow, right? We have the line of our paper for the debate about argument 1. We have the line of our paper for the debate about argument 2. And when we organize our speeches, that is how we structure our summary. The key phrase for this is they say, we say. So as you're doing line by line, you would go through the arguments and you would literally say, they say their first response, whatever it is. We say, and then you explain your response. They say their second response. We say that's wrong because of reasons. They say their third response. We say that's wrong because of reasons. Does that general idea make sense? I got 2 thumbs ups. Are the people not reacting? Just terrified and confused? If you are, give me a clap emoji. It is okay if you're terrified and confused. I want to know, because then I need to re-explain it. Okay. So we've got a couple of clap emojis and a couple of questions in the chat. So first question is line by line used to construct the summary? Yes, it is. Shanna's absolutely right. The first 2 speeches, like I said, very easy. You just lay out your argument. And then the summary and final focus follow this line by line format, which is you respond to the arguments from your opponent's rebuttal in the order that they made them. So let's go back to our horse example. Let's say my contention is eating horses is very good. I have evidence, which is, I forgot who said this, but you said you tried it with your friend, oh, Taylor. You said you had it with your Kazakhstan friend and it was great. And therefore we should eat horse meat. That's your contention. Then the rebuttal might have several responses. You might say, no, horse meat should not be eaten. 1, horses are too smart. 2, horses are endangered, so it's bad for the environment to eat them. 3, horses are expensive, and we should not eat that kind of food because it's very hard to get. Line by line would respond to those arguments in order. You would say, you know, they say their first response that horses are too smart and we shouldn't eat them. That's wrong. Pigs are also smart and people eat them all the time. So this should not be an argument against eating horses. Second, they say it's bad for the environment. That's wrong. There are plenty of horses. It would be totally okay to eat them. Eating pigs or cows is worse because when you farm them, that's bad for the environment too. Does that help? Taylor is very happy with me for choosing that example. But yeah, hopefully that example of line by line is a little bit, it clears it up a little bit. Another question, what if we agree with the opponents? Yes, that is possible. Sometimes you will agree with your opponents. And remember, in the summary speech, you don't have enough time to respond to everything that happened earlier because of time limits, right? There's 8 minutes of topic to cover in just 3 minutes. So you have to make choices. And some of those choices mean you will have to agree with your opponent on some issues. You can't debate them about everything. There's just not enough time. So what if you agree with your opponents, then you say, they say their third argument, we will concede it. That's fine. We will not go for the part of the contention that argument answers. For example, you can do that. This list you're looking at on the slide of organization phrases are some other phrases you can use to help organize your line by line debating. We have 3 responses. Now we will respond to their whatever contention. Numbering. All of these are very helpful because they tell the people listening to your speech what the structure of your speech is going to be, which makes it easier to write down. We call these things signposting. Signposting is called that because it means you are putting up a sign where you are telling the judge, okay, now we are talking about this part of the flow, right? So remember, each line on the flow represents a separate section of the debate. So you need to tell the judge which section you're talking about so they can write down your arguments in the correct place. The reason we do all of this, so it's a very specific structure and it's kind of complicated to pick up. So the reason we do this is because if your flow is good and you have some practice with line by line, you don't need to think about the structure of your speech at all. It saves so much prep time because you don't need to think about what will I discuss first? What will I discuss second? Your flow and your notes organize your speech for you, which is very, very nice, very convenient. As part of our line by line, we also use some special labels to describe the parts of a contention that we are talking about. This is an element of signposting, which I discussed a second ago. These three pieces are going to be present in every complete contention. So the three pieces are uniqueness, the link or the solvency, and the impact. So I'll start actually working from bottom to top because that's, I think, the easiest to hardest. So the impact to a contention is very simple. It is, why is this contention a big deal? Let's take an example of a fake news contention. So this contention would be a con argument that says social media hurts democracy because it spreads fake news. The impact to this contention would be why fake news hurts democracy or democratic values. So pretty straightforward. Yeah, an impact is often going to be a long-lasting result that affects a large population. So it's not just any consequence, it's kind of the final consequence in the chain of causes and effects that your contention is describing. So that's the impact. The second part of the contention is the link. The link asks, what does social media have to do with this? Or what does the topic have to do with this? With our fake news contention, which part of the contention would you say is the link? Can someone tell me? So the contention is social media spreads fake news more effectively than any other platform, and that's bad for democracy because it makes voters less informed. Let's say that's the contention. Can someone make a guess at what the link to the contention is? So the contention is social media spreads fake news very effectively. Fake news causes, okay, we got some people who are lost. Okay, so let me write this down. So stop the platform. Yeah, okay, so I think people are people are making a guess at the right part of the argument. So with the argument, there is a piece of the argument that connects the problem of fake news to social media. So the link says social media spreads fake news. And so, like you all are suggesting, the solution might be to stop social media or stop the platform. So, link, what does the problem have to do with the topic of social media in our case? For the fake news contention, that question is answered by the argument that social media spreads fake news. That link then leads to the impact, which is why this matters. Social media is, or fake news is bad for democracy in this case. Emily says, in a democratic country, social media shows how democratic a country is. So that's not a link to the fake news contention, but that could be a link to a different contention. So you might be thinking about a contention that says social media is good for democracy because people can use it to get together and share democratic values and to share information that reveals whether the country they are living in is really a democracy, right? So that could be a pro argument on this topic. So the link would be exactly what Emily's saying, that social media shows how democratic a country is. For the students, let me give you another example to help make this a little bit easier. So yeah, so Paul, that's exactly right. So social media accelerates the spread of information, causing fake news to flood. That's an example of a link to the fake news contention. But let's think back to our exercise from a little bit earlier. So remember, one of the arguments was we should not travel with our parents to Yilan because traveling to Yilan requires going through Taipei, and Taipei has a lot of sick people, so it's dangerous. This is the sickness contention. The link to the sickness contention is driving through Taipei puts us at risk of sickness. So what is the connection between sickness and the proposal to drive to Yilan? It is that we go through Taipei, which puts us at risk. The impact is, why is sickness bad or significant? Does that help a little bit? So, good question. Is the link between information and fake news strong enough? So this is something that you would debate about throughout the speeches. And this is why I'm bringing this up. So if the con makes a fake news argument, the pro would definitely want to say the link between spreading information and spreading fake news is not strong. Social media does not cause fake news, right? That's something the pro would want to respond with. And we would call that a no link argument. Does that help the people who were lost earlier? Is this making a little bit more sense? Got a thumbs up. We've got to go faster. Yeah, okay. Okay, maybe I'll stick to the driving example to explain uniqueness then, because that's a little bit easier. So uniqueness is the third part of a contention. And uniqueness asks, is this consequence or this effect unique to the proposal or the topic or the resolution? So with the driving example, for the sickness contention, the uniqueness argument would say we will only get sick if we drive through Taipei. The reason uniqueness is important is because if a consequence is not unique to the proposal, it's not a reason to reject the proposal or to vote for it. If you would get sick no matter what, then the risk of getting sick by driving is not a reason not to go to Yilan. Does that make sense? If you imagine each side as like a bubble, right? So you have what happens if you vote pro and what happens if you vote con. If a consequence exists in both bubbles, then it's not a reason to pick one or the other. No matter what happens, that consequence will happen. So for the sickness contention or the sickness argument to matter as a reason not to go to Yilan, it has to be true that if we don't go to Yilan, we probably won't get sick. Does that make sense? I've got one thumbs up. Again, if I'm losing you, say something, because I'm happy to re-explain this differently if it helps, or give another example, or whatever people need. Okay. On the slide here, I have written some examples of shorthand you can use to write down link, impact, or uniqueness. This is just what I use though. And like I said, you can use whatever shorthand you want. Give the example on social media and fake news again. Yes, absolutely. So shorthand, okay, I'll answer the second question first. So shorthand is when you write something down without writing it out completely. So instead of uniqueness, I would write UQ because that's faster. Instead of link, I would write L/ because that's faster. Or instead of impact, I would write an exclamation mark in a circle because that's faster and it represents the longer idea. You'll see on the example in a second what this looks like. The example on social media and fake news. So the contention says social media is bad for democracy because social media is more powerful than anything else at spreading fake news, and fake news is bad for democracy. The link says social media spreads fake news. The impact says fake news is bad or is important. The uniqueness says without social media, fake news would not spread as much. So the downside of fake news is unique to social media. Nothing else spreads fake news as effectively. Yes, Paul is phrasing this in logic terms, but that's exactly correct. You want to prove that if you don't vote for the resolution, then the effect will not happen. Or if you do vote for the resolution, the effect will not happen, depending on which side you are. So fake news happens if you vote for social media. Fake news does not happen if you do not vote for social media. That's the idea behind uniqueness. Is that helpful? Or does that example make sense? Okay, nice. Oh, I forgot I already spelled out this example. So you can take a look at this for a second here. But in the meantime, I just want to point out on this slide that, as I kind of hinted at earlier, in order for a contention to work, it needs all of these parts. If fake news does not matter, then the contention fails because it's not important. It's not a reason to reject social media. If social media does not cause misinformation, obviously, then misinformation is not a reason to reject social media. If other types of media make misinformation or fake news inevitable, then social media is not the problem and the contention fails. So all of these pieces need to be there in order for the contention to work effectively. And I'm mentioning this because as we're giving our summary and final focus speeches, remember, I said it's important to make choices. And one of the common ways that you will make choices is you will pick which part of an opponent's contention you can attack the most effectively. So you'll try to figure out what's the weakest part of what my opponent is saying, and then you'll save time by just focusing on that part. So earlier, someone asked, what happens if you agree or if you concede something? With this example,
Anthony, you may have frozen. Did Anthony freeze on your end, everyone, or just mine? Okay, cool. I'm just making sure it wasn't just me. He'll be right back. Zoom is like, mostly it's me that Zoom does this to, where it'll freeze on me and kick me out. This is the first time it's done it to Anthony. So, but he'll be right back. What questions do you have while we're waiting on Anthony to be able to rejoin? So while we're waiting on Anthony, a couple of things that I'll say about flowing is I use symbols a lot. So I will use that mathematical symbol or the one that's opposite. Or I'll use arrows up and down for increase, decrease. I will use usually just 2 letters to represent a country. Yeah, okay, so great question. So yeah, Anthony's, just so you know, Anthony's internet went down, he's resetting it, he'll be back. So I made a comment earlier about a link or a link story would be A means B happens, and then that causes C to happen, or this big thing to occur. So A would be the uniqueness, right? Traveling through Taipei would get us sick. or traveling to Yilan means we would have to travel through Taipei. B would be the link. Traveling through Taipei will make us sick because of the number of sick people there. C would be the impact. Being sick is bad because, and then you would finish that. And that is what we call a story or a link chain. Does that help? Does that make sense? The A, B, C structure of uniqueness, link, impact. Anybody? Can I, yep, so uniqueness leads to the link, which leads then to the impact. Awesome. Okay. What other questions? Anthony is just resetting his router at the moment. Or he might be, he's gonna try one more time before I take over for him. Okay, so we have people are the main reason that dodo birds died out. Okay, so our uniqueness would be human hunting is the unique damage which caused the dodo bird to decrease because they hunted them for food. And then, so the dodo birds disappear forever. So yes, except that I would say an impact would be, why is the dodo birds missing forever or disappearing forever? Why should we care about that? What problem does them going extinct create? But yes, that is a good link chain. Does that make some sense? So we could do social media and fake news, right? A uniqueness, social media spreads. Yeah, exactly, Paul. So the dodo bird was an important species to the environment or the food chain. When it died out, all these other bad things happen, you know, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, exactly. That could be a great impact. So social media spreads fake news. B, the link could be that fake news spreads quickly on social media because of how easy it is to share stories. C would be the impact. Fake news results in something, causes something, anything like that. Since there is a link from A to B, is it possible that there's no uniqueness from A to B? So that could be an argument from the opponents, right? So let's use the social media one, for example. Right, I say social media spreads fake news, blah, 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 blah. This is really bad. If I was, my opponent could say, fake news spread is not unique to social media and has been around since the times of newspapers, right? Then I could talk about yellow journalism and propaganda posters. And I would say, you know, this is not unique to social media, so it doesn't matter in today's debate. Does that answer your question about the uniqueness not existing? It can definitely be an argument you can make. Awesome. What other questions do you have? These are amazing questions. I know. Oh, we may have. I think you're back.
I am back. I'm on my phone hotspot, so the signal might be bad, but we are back.
No worries. We were just going through examples of a link chain of like A to B to C. And they've come up with some really good ones while you were gone. I think let's get a thumbs up reaction if the ABC for links to impacts makes some sense. Thumbs down if you still have zero idea if we're talking about. Thumbs up, you're like, I'm getting it. Thumbs down to, I don't understand any of it. Okay, quite a few thumbs up.
Shannon, can you give me co-host?
Oh yeah, did it take off? Yep, sorry about that.
Yeah. Yep. No, you're good.
Make co-host. There. Okay, you should have it.
Next.
Anthony, why don't you try turning your video off for now, because it may help with the connection because you're lagging kind of due to it being your hotspot. And I'll say something. Yeah, that's a lot better.
That's better? Okay.
It's still a little laggy, but yeah, it's a lot better. And then if you could turn subtitles back on, please.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, so in order to demonstrate what I have gone over so far, we will do a small activity. So the way that this will work is I will show you a series of quote unquote speeches. But instead of using arguments, we're going to use playing cards. So whenever you hear me say the name of a playing card, think to yourself that there would be an argument in that place. And to keep it simple, we will just focus on one sheet of paper, which is the debate about the pro case in this case. So here is our sheet of paper over here on the right. You can see that there is a column devoted to each speech. We don't need two constructive columns because remember, we flowed the con constructive on the con piece of paper. These subtitles are really lagging behind. Can people hear me? It's saying my internet connection is slow, so it can't do subtitles. Yeah, I got a thumbs up. Okay. Yeah, sorry. The subtitles might not work. I will try to speak slowly, and as usual, if someone wants me to slow down, I will do that. Yeah, I'll just turn them off and talk slowly. Yeah, sorry about this. My router just turned itself off and I could not get it to connect to the internet again. So we play the hand we're dealt. Anyway, so yeah, we only need one constructive column because the con constructive went on the con piece of paper. So here we're looking at the constructive speech. So contention 1 is the King of Hearts. Remember, we're using shorthand. So I'm not writing down King of Hearts, or I'm not writing down the whole argument because I don't have time. So to save time, I'm using shorthand. So my shorthand is KH. You could use a different shorthand, like drawing a picture of a heart if you prefer, but that's my shorthand. Social media addresses this issue for 2 reasons. So again, you can see I wrote down a shorter version of the argument. It solves, there are 2 links. The first link is 4 of hearts. The second is 5 of diamonds. This matters for 2 reasons. So there are 2 impacts. And the impacts are the King of Clubs and the Ace of Hearts. So, like I talked about, flowing the constructive is really simple. You just record it straight down. And that's all you need to do. Now we have the con rebuttal. Remember, that's the second speech that talks about the pro's case, because those other speeches are talking about the con's case. The con rebuttal starts off by signposting. So again, we're telling the judge, we're talking about this section of the flow. So the judge knows exactly which part of their paper to record the arguments and the responses. The first con response is no link 6 of hearts. The second is no impact 2 of spades. And the third is no link ace of spades. So again, we wrote the constructive straight down. We wrote the rebuttal in a new column. Now, there's one thing about this flow that I would say is not very good. It's not following some of the advice I gave earlier. Does someone have an idea? What's wrong with this flow? Any guesses? If not, it's okay, because we covered this pretty quickly. No, the order's fine. So the order part will come in a second, but yeah, so yes, exactly. So the people who are guessing about the order, those are good guesses because order is important in flowing, but remember, not for the constructive and rebuttal. All we need to do for those is just write them straight down. The problem, as Payman says, is exactly right, which is there's not enough space between the arguments. Remember, 3-finger rule. We need 3 fingers in between each of these arguments in order to be able to write down what happens in the next speech. For now, though, since I'm making this up, I have made it so it all works out and there's enough space for everything. But just remember, in a real flow, you want to make sure that there's plenty of room so that you can write down what happens in the next speech and it all lines up. So next, we have the summary. And for those of you who are interested in the order, this is where the line by line starts. So constructive and rebuttal, we can write straight down. But the summary and the final focus will both debate this page in the order that was set by the rebuttal. So before they start doing line by line, they have this little overview at the top where they say their impact outweighs and they give a reason, which is the 9 of hearts. Now, there's this magic phrase. They say number 1, no link. So whenever you see they say, that's your cue that line by line is happening. So this is where the order comes in. The summary is going to go through the rebuttal arguments in order and respond to each of them. So first, they say number one, no link. What are the pros responses? They extend or they apply their link argument from before, which was the 5 of diamonds. And they make a new argument, the jack of clubs. They say number 2, extend our ace of hearts impact. So apply our impact argument from earlier. And 2 of clubs. Now, let's say the pro summary speech ended here. So that was it. That's all the pro summary said. Based on what you can see on the flow right now, you have no idea what the arguments are. They're just represented by cards, but what can you tell from the flow is an option for the con summary speech. What can the con summary speech focus on really effectively here? This pro summary speech made a really big mistake. Anyone see it? Yeah. Oh, so yeah. So you are right that once again we are running out of space. But again, I'm pretending for this demonstration just to fit everything on one slide. For now, we're just pretending that there is enough space because I'm making all of this up. But yes, you are totally right that there is definitely not enough space being left on this flow. Paul is exactly right, although it's not the constructive that we missed, it's a rebuttal argument. Which rebuttal argument has the pro not responded to? Exactly. The pro summary didn't respond to the rebuttal's third argument. Yeah, exactly. This is the really nice thing about flowing, because if you think about each line or each strip of the flow as the debate about one argument, it makes it really easy to see where each speech is focusing and if a speech has forgotten to talk about something. Here, you can clearly see there's rebuttal argument number 3. Here's blank space in the summary next to it. There's nothing there. So the con summary could say something like this. Go to their King of Hearts contention. The pro summary messed up. They did not answer our third response, which was no link because of Ace of Spades. They conceded it, which means it's true. They did not meet their burden of disproof. And now they can no longer make new arguments because they have failed to disprove this. So it's now true for the rest of the debate. Does that make sense? Okay. But just for the sake of showing you what happens when there is not a concession, let's pretend, oh yeah, so they can say that. Let's pretend that the con also wants to go for another argument. So then the speech might sound something like this. Go to their King of Hearts contention. Again, remember, signposting. We have to tell the judge which part of the debate we're focusing on, which is the first thing the con summary does. Then they say, extend our first response. No link because of 6 of hearts. They have 2 answers. First, they say 5 of diamonds. We say ace of diamonds. you should prefer it because Queen of Spades. So again, you can see stuff is lining up between the speeches. We have 5 of diamonds as a response here, and then the con is responding to 5 of diamonds with ace of diamonds in order to prove 6 of hearts. And then they respond to Jack of clubs by saying 9 of diamonds. Is this generally making sense to people? Give me a no if it is not making sense. Good question. Can the pro respond to 3 in the final focus? So if you are the pro debater, oh, my audio isn't stable. Yeah, I don't. Shanna, could you answer this one? And I want to try to fix my internet again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So can the pro respond to number 3 in the final focus? That's a great question. And the answer is they can try, but the judge should not evaluate it. So the summary speech is the last time anything new should be presented or any argument should be responded to. The final focus is only 2 minutes, so you don't have enough time to cover things that you did not answer in the previous speech. And also, those 2 minutes should only be spent telling the judge why your team should win, so that you are, really focusing on the benefits of your team. But also remember, Anthony talked about what's considered dropping or conceding an argument. And if you get to the final focus and you realize you have not responded to number 3, it is too late because you didn't respond to it in the first speech after it was introduced. Does that answer your question? Because that's a really good question.
My router rebooted, so I've reconnected to my real internet. Hopefully this will work better. The one thing I'll add to that is, although technically it is too late, if you are a debater and you are in the position that the pro is in, you should absolutely try to make a new response. Because why not? The judge might ignore it, but it's better to give it a try, or to say something like, oh no, actually some other argument we made responds to that. We just did it out of order, and we're sorry for doing it out of order, but we didn't make a mistake. We actually did answer it. Something like that. But the judge is likely going to say that doesn't work because you missed it in the summary speech, so it's too late to bring it back. This is a version of what we were just looking at, but handwritten. I'm putting this here because even though I just showed you a flow in a spreadsheet, you should always flow on paper. I could literally talk for a whole hour about why it is better to flow on paper than on a computer. There are so many reasons. But just take my word for it. It is a really bad idea to flow on your computer if you can avoid it. So you can see here a couple of things again. There's our columns. You can see there's spacing between the arguments. The spacing's not great, but it's there. It's way better than it was on the spreadsheet we were just looking at. I like to draw arrows on paper to represent when one thing is responding to something else. That way, if I need to adjust, I can do that like I did here. And the other thing that should really stand out here is the two different colors. So I have a pro color, which I'm using blue, and a con color, which I'm using red. You don't have to do this because you could just keep track using the columns, but I recommend using different colors to represent the two sides, just because it's easier to follow along. Other questions? Hopefully the demonstration helped. Yeah, Shanna makes a good point in the chat, which is the two colors make it way easier for your brain to follow along with the debate and distinguish or tell apart which side said what. Very true. No more questions? All right, so since y'all are such flowing experts, I'm gonna have someone try it. So same debate, we're traveling back in time. We're going back to the rebuttal. In that first example I gave, the pro summary made that huge mistake. So I would like someone to try using line by line words to give a pro summary speech on this position. Again, we're using cards to represent the arguments. So you don't have to think about what the arguments are. You can just make it up. But what I would like is for someone to use line by line to try to answer the rebuttal arguments. I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about it, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Think about how you want to do this. And then I would like a brave, preferably student volunteer. I believe in you all. You all were rock stars during the first activity we did. And you also are about to practice this using some practice debates. So if you want to give it a try before you do the debates, it's a good idea. Yes, making mistakes here is better than making mistakes at the tournament. So practicing here, really good. Anyone? Yeah, if no one volunteers, I will volunteer you. Although I don't actually know. We got a confused emoji. So remember, all you have to do is we're not thinking about what the arguments are. We're using playing cards to represent the arguments. All we're doing is the line by line. So responding in order, they say number 1, we say blank. They say number 2, we say blank. Maybe this will help you. Yeah, Paul, I think I'm going to draft you.
Okay. I'm just gonna type it in the chat box, but I think I'll just say it, okay? So the first pro summary will be to the rebuttal one. So you can just make it up like 5D, perhaps.
Yep.
Yep, so it's 5 diamonds. And the second response to the second rebuttal, you can say like, for example, AH.
Great.
You can write it. And the last response to the third rebuttal, you can just make it up like anything you like. For example, 4H or 2C.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we're looking for. So literally all Paul is doing is he's going through the rebuttal arguments and answering them in order. So he's saying, they say number one, we say, I think he said 5C. They say number two, we say, I think he said AH. They say number three, we say 5D again. Really, really good. That was perfect. Does someone else want to try it? And remember, what we're practicing for is we're trying to practice the structure now so that when we replace the playing cards with actual arguments, you won't have to think about the structure. All you will have to think about is the arguments, and the structure will happen by itself. Yeah, Taylor, do you want to try? I don't know if you're a student or a teacher. You are a teacher. Okay. You don't have to try if you don't want to.
Oh, come on. Let a teacher try.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Taylor, give it a shot. Let's see what you can do. Remember.
Oh, okay. So for the pro summary, so you can just go down there and just sort of respond to the rebuttals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could do something like you could do like 7H first.
Okay.
7H. Then you could do something like 2C, and then for the third one you could do something like AC.
Sure. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was really good. The one thing I would say is, for when you're doing line by line, saying the words "they say this" is helpful, just because it tells the people listening which argument you're dealing with to line it all up. But yeah, that's that's all you were really missing. So if you just say they say 6H, we say, I forgot what you said, 7C, right?
Oh yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So it'd be like, they say 6H, we say 7H. They say 2S, we say 2C. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah, so remember with the horse example, when I was like, they say the horse is too smart. We say that doesn't matter because pigs are also smart and everyone thinks it's okay to eat them. They say it's bad for the environment. That's wrong. Cows are way worse. Right? So that's what we're representing here, is each of these cards represents an argument.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay. I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
We've got another person who would like to try. Let's hear what you came up with.
So if they say the first rebuttal 6H is better, and I could say I think 7H is better. And to the second rebuttal, they say 2S is better, but I think 3S is better, just like this, right? This mode. Am I right?
Yeah, that's perfect. It doesn't matter. Like the cards don't mean anything. They just represent some real argument that you would say.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Yeah. So what Paul sent in the chat is great. Questions about this? Hopefully by trying it, this made a little bit more sense. Yes, Emily.
Can I just follow the rebuttal and make a per summary by mentioning number 1, 6H, and they say 6H, and we say blah, blah, blah. And number 2, they say 2S, and we say blah, blah, blah. Number 3, they say AS, and we mention, and we think blah, blah, blah. Does that mean we have to cover all the 3 rebuttals?
Yeah, good question. So remember, this is why we spent so much time talking about the different parts of the contention, right? So here, although I didn't write out what the actual argument is, I did make a note that number 1 and number 3 are answers to the link, and number 2 is an answer to the impact. So remember, we need all 3 in order for the contention to work. So if we were to concede there's no link, that's a problem, because that means our contention is not caused by the topic. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So what I will say is, in this example, we're just focusing on one contention, which is our King of Hearts contention. But again, normally there will be 2 or 3 contentions on each side's case. So the pro might have a King of Hearts contention and whatever, a 7 of clubs contention and a 3 of hearts contention, whatever, right? In that case, you can concede all of this stuff if you're going to go for a different contention and defend that one, right? So you can absolutely concede an argument if you want to strategically make a choice to focus on something else. But if you want to go for the contention, you have to defend all the different parts of it. And the way we do that is, while staying organized, is through line by line. Question in the chat. Yeah, so yeah. In this example, we were pretending to be pro. Yeah, so question, if you miss responding to the 3rd argument in the rebuttal, can you bring it up again in the final focus? So because of the burden of disproof or the burden of rejoinder, if you really missed something in a speech, it becomes too late. So hopefully you remember Shanna's metaphor about the burning room. Hopefully you have another door, because your door has probably collapsed if you concede that there is no link to your contention, right? But if you don't have another door, like I said, you should still answer the argument in the final focus, because why not? Just give it a try. There's no harm to it. At that point, you have no choice and you have to do your best. Just the chances are that the judge will say it's too late because you missed this in an earlier speech.
I want to clarify something. So originally I said that in NTNU, you might be, your team may split you, but Charlotte corrected me. Those are old rules. So if you competed previously and your school had a group be a pro team and a group be a con team, this year going forward, you as a team, so a pair, will have to prepare both sides. So you'll have to do and be ready to switch side debate, which is very similar to what the United States does. So you'll have to be ready for both sides before a tournament. So I just wanted to clarify that because I was wrong in my initial post.
All right. Time is getting kind of tight. Oh, yes. Can you bring up something that you missed during the summary during the final? So if you miss something in the summary, if you concede a rebuttal argument, that argument becomes true. The judge will probably treat that argument as being true, even if you come up with a great answer during the final focus. And the reason for this is, imagine if you are pro and the con misses one of your rebuttal arguments. They don't talk about it in the summary, but then the con in their final focus brings up their response. If that counted, it wouldn't be fair because the con final focus is the last speech in the debate. So if that counted, the pro basically has no chance to respond to what the con has to say about this argument. That's why answering it in the summary is really important, because if you miss it, but you only answer it in the final focus, it's unfair because there's no time to have a response. So yes, you should, if you want to go for an argument, you should respond to every objection by your opponent to that argument in the first speech where you can do that, which is the summary. Yeah, so if you missed up, if you made a mistake and you missed it, bringing it up in the crossfire to make it sound less new to the judge, to hopefully trick the judge into thinking that you answered it earlier, is a good idea. The crossfire is not a speech. So as you saw in the flows, we were not writing down what was happening in the crossfire. The crossfire sets up arguments that can be made during a speech, but the crossfire is not itself a speech. So crossfire can help you recover in this situation, but it's still not technically enough. You should still answer the argument in the summary and not rely on the crossfire. All right. I think we should, to make sure that you all have time to do some of these debates yourselves, we should transition to doing Spar Debates, which Shanna will introduce. Did we lose Shanna? Oh no, there she is. Yeah, so
Did you say switch to Spar?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Sorry, my Zoom did what it's been doing for the last 3 weeks, so just froze and refused to do anything. Yes, so we're going to transition to the Spar Debates. One moment, I'm looking for a document to share with you. Here it is. So as I mentioned previously, we have put you in groups kind of randomly, kind of strategically, so that you can work with some individuals from around the island, get to know some other people. And we've paired you up, teachers and students. So the document that I'm going to give you a link to has the activity slideshow up at the, has that link at the top, but it's also the Spar Debate activity that we or that's in the PowerPoint Google Drive that I shared with you. I'm going to put this in the chat. Also, we are say goodbye to Anthony. He's on Central Time in the United States, so he's 13 hours behind us. So he is going to go to bed because it's super late or super early, depending on how you want to look at it. So he will be back in the morning. And this is what we're going to end with. So if you could please open that Google document that I just put in the chat, you should be able to hopefully find your name. If you do not see your name, let me know, because one of two things happened. I accidentally left you off, which is my mistake, or you were not here in the morning session and I took you off to account for possibly not being here in the afternoon. So open the Google document, look at it, find your name, and see which group you are in. All right. Then also open up the Spar Debates PowerPoint or Google document, because that you will need that for while you are doing your debates. And I'm going to share my screen with you just to go over a couple of things. So teachers, oh, you can do it, computer. Oh, come on, internet. Ugh. Okay, so what you're going to do is when I open the breakout rooms, you will go to the room number that is the same as your group number.